Every day in the classroom, we try to make every day special, every day great for our students, whether they're working on their own, surrounded by their peers, or they're working in groups, ready to make each other better, learn from each other. That is until the pandemic struck. Now, students went from collaborating, working together, talking to one another, being inches from one another, and seeing their classmates every day into just sitting on their sofas, couches, doing their work on their own. And for a lot of us, students, teachers, parents felt very frustrated with this, mostly because students weren't trained on how to do this. We never foresaw this possibility of them needing to be at a college level, study at home, having these abilities. So it was frustrating for students and teachers because now it was all on the parents to help them with the technology piece of that. Now, the reason I bring this up is because one day I got a text from a student. I was just checking my emails and the student sent me some information saying, "Hey, Mr. Pecina, can you send me the information for these students?" Now, knowing the COPA and technology protections for students, I said, I can't give you the information, it's private, but what I can do, that's when I got the idea, what I can do is invite them to our next office hours through Google Meets. And she said, cool. So that's exactly what happened. I invited them to the meeting and they showed up. They wanted to show up. They wanted to talk to one another. They wanted to do the following, which is my first step and my first plan, is communication. Students want to communicate with one another. Students need that social aspect. They need a social network. And that's the first part of my plan. Now, step one is important because 40% of students have been reporting feeling isolated or alone since the pandemic, according to Common Sense Media. Now, to combat the problem of practice, I developed the solution of student-led digital communication. Students are building the social network. Now, they'll be in charge of contacting one another in study group-like fashions in a virtual, or if we go back to school, in an actual study group fashion environment. And they'll be assigned to check in with one another if they completed their work, how they're doing socially, emotionally. And I would pop into these meetings if we're in school, then I would just like contact with the leader and then meet with their group at a certain point. And if we're doing this virtually, then I'll do it through office hours of like 5 minutes with this group, 5 minutes with that group. And then I would check in on them of how are they doing. I would check in with the leader of how's your group doing? And then I would check in with the group of how are things going with everyone. And this is just to get more voices in the room of, well, I heard this from them, they shared this with me, so I'm not just the only one talking about each other, they're talking together, and then I come in as the voice at the end to hear what's happening. Now, my idea for combating this problem is through class jobs. Hear me out. Now, in the classroom, I had students do certain jobs for me, certain tasks that students could do that had them do valuable skills for the classroom that they were learning and practice them, such as communicating with their peers, such as being in charge of who does what jobs. It was sort of a tiered system. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly how I want it to look like in the next year, but what I do want it to look like is students were sharing in the role of communication, not just with their friends, but with their groups. And that goes through class jobs. Who actually wants to do this? Who wants to be a leader in the classroom? And then part of that step is the training process, which leads me into step two. Step two is basically digital citizenship education focused on empathy and kindness, because they will be the leaders of their groups. They need to know how to be effective leaders. Now, we'll be using a lot of curriculum by Common Sense Education, and they'll be learning these skills and practicing them, which comes into step 3 is the feedback loop. They're not just getting feedback from me, their group is giving them feedback on how to be more effective leaders of, it was effective when you, or next time can you try. This will not just be me saying it, it will be their teammates saying it. And then the leaders will reflect on this and improve for the coming next week. They'll be doing this week by week on how well did you do, what can you do better, and what can we continue doing. This is at least my idea on sharing the transformational authority of, it's not just me speaking to them, it's you speaking to each other, communicating with each other, having that social aspect of, it's not just you that's responsible for you, it's people are responsible for you, not just your parent, it's also your teammates, your classmates together.